Good morning, everybody. Thanks for your patience while we're allowing everybody to join today. I hope you've all got a cuppa as we've experienced. I think we got teased a little bit with a bit of spring over the last couple of days, and then the reality of winter, and the rain has certainly hit Adelaide where we are, where I am today. For all of you joining us today, today's the Wednesday, the 11th of August. If you don't know me, I'm Kathy Ramsey, the Partnerships Manager here at TIC-SA, the Tourism Industry Council of South Australia, the peak body for tourism, peak industry body for tourism in our state. The In Conversation series is a program undertaken to help keep the South Australian tourism industry and stakeholders engaged and informed. Whilst I'll introduce our lovely speaker, Andy Glen, shortly, I just want to run through a few housekeeping matters so our session runs smoothly today. Appreciate if everybody could keep their microphone on mute. Let's use the chat function for any questions, and we really encourage people to come through with questions. We'll endeavour to work through those through the session, excuse me, but we also allow time for question and answer at the end. Today, it's with my pleasure I have Andy Glen, the Chair of the South Australian Visitor Information Centre, on the call to share with you a wealth of knowledge and expertise and an update on visitor centres. Together with Andy, on this call, we have got 9 Visitor Information Centre managers joining us from all across the state, which is wonderful, as we know there is always uniquenesses to every region of our state. So a message to all the VIC managers on the call: you're welcome to pop in and take yourself off mute to help answer any queries, or pop in and to support Andy at any time. So, like I said, Andy is going to be sharing his expertise with us, addressing the greater need of collaboration between visitor information centres, tourism operators, including how to better utilise and leverage your visitor information centre as a part of your marketing channels. Welcome, Andy.
Thank you, Kathy, and welcome everyone. It's fabulous to see so many people joining us and thereby taking an interest in how to work better with your visitor information centre. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
Lovely. So to kick things off, Andy, can you share with our audience today the role of visitor information centres and who you consider to be your #1 customer?
Okay, it's probably not common knowledge that the VIC network, which is a representative body for all of the 41 accredited visitor centres in South Australia, we've been through quite a significant period of change over the last 5 years, and we're still working toward that. You mentioned a very good point, because we have been a subcommittee of the Tourism Industry Council since January 2019. We recognised straight away that the industry was or should be our #1 customer. And we certainly treat members of our industry, whether that be private businesses, small, medium or large, local government, regional tourism organisations and the regional development boards. We treat them all as part of our industry, and the visitor information centres therefore cannot service our visitors, the visitors to our regions, properly unless we're actively engaged and treat the industry as a #1 customer. And what that looks like in reality can be quite different from visitor centre to visitor centre, because we're all owned by different stakeholders and we're all run in slightly different ways. Of course, our location spread all the way across South Australia does have an impact on how we can run individual businesses. But I'll talk largely today from the Visitor Centre Network perspective, because as I said, we are a representative group of all 41, plus 3 affiliate members, 2 of which come from interstate. So we are very pleased that we're putting ourselves out there to join further afield than just South Australia as well. In essence, a little bit of background of the Visitor Centre Network. Many years ago, when I first came into tourism and had involvement with the Visitor Information Centre in the Clare Valley, the SATC organised what they called a steering group of Visitor Centre managers to talk about VIC business. It was very much under the auspices of the SATC, and they provided a modest budget, and every 3 months, one member from each region would go in and have a conversation about how visitor centres and the SATC could work together. The VIC network came about, was established in May 2015 as the need for visitor centres to take control of their own advocacy and operational methods. So we formed as a subcommittee of TIC SA in January 19, and we hold industry leader membership of TIC SA as well, which is very important and highlights the importance to us of our number one customer, the industry.
Yeah, I think, Andy, that's really important to share. Going back, you shared that with a conversation with me earlier this year. It's really important to understand that for all visitor information centres operating throughout the state, firstly and primarily their number one customer is the industry, because let's put it quite simply, Andy, without the industry, without product, and that's a vitally important part of an operation of a VIC.
Yeah, absolutely. Imagine if there was no industry and there were still VICs. People would come into a VIC and they would be asking questions about where's a playground that I can take my children to, where can we go for a nice nature walk. We'd be promoting scenic drives and trails and some local facilities and maybe some repairers, but we would have no one. We would have no stories to tell. And essentially we're storytellers, and we want to be storytellers. We want to tell your story, not only tell the story from what we know and have experienced, but we want to tell your story the way you want it told and how you want it told. And it's very important, therefore, that VICs and industry get together and collaborate so that those stories can be relayed not only to the manager of the VIC, but to all of the people that work there, whether they be paid or unpaid.
Yeah, that's a really great point there, Andy. VICs are a great source of information and inspiration, providing visitors with quality service and a reliable insight into what experience and products they have to offer in the region. What would be sort of for our members on the call today, and to line it up with their typical customer, what would be a typical VIC customer? And I know that might differ from region to region, so our VIC managers, you're welcome to hop on and share a bit of knowledge there on what, for our members, what's the typical customer walking into a VIC centre?
Sure. VICs will largely service visitors who do not necessarily live in the region themselves. So the people that live in a region, they know the region well, they might come in and seek inspiration occasionally because they got visiting friends and relatives. But as a general rule, they're not our number one target market. Sadly, for us right at the moment, many visitor centres are experiencing significantly less numbers of people coming in because border closures have taken away the whole eastern seaboard at the moment, and we all understand those problems. You're struggling to fill your bookings and beds and restaurants, and we're also struggling to inspire large numbers of people like we may once have done. The good news for that, though, is in regions with the campaigns, visitor centres that would not normally see massive amounts of people are in fact now seeing massive amounts of people, and they're tourists that are coming from other parts of the state to experience and holiday in South Australia. So that campaign's working extremely well. On an ordinary day, I could say to you that visitor centres, depending on their location and their accessibility, would experience high numbers of interstate and international people, and also would see numbers of people coming from other regions in South Australia. So they are a traditional market form. We also understand that over time, the perception of visitor centres is that they're used largely by older people, the grey nomads, the baby boomers, the over 60s. We do still have that market, and I want to put it out there to you right up front that there is an emerging trend of younger people now coming in, the under 50s that are utilising visitor information centres as well. We know this because we survey every visitor centre in South Australia twice a year in February and August, and we gather data from the people who are prepared to fill in those surveys. And we're certainly showing, as I said, a younger demographic is taking an active interest in VICs. And this doesn't mean to say that they're not digitally savvy. Our research shows that 91% of all people coming in and participating in surveys are digitally savvy. The good news for visitor centres, the relevance and importance of them is that those people are still coming in for referral, for affirmation of what they've read online, and to seek personal recommendation and referrals to local, regional and statewide businesses as well.
That's great. So Andy, you know, you've talked about industry's number one customer. There's a need for greater collaboration between industry and VICs. So if I was an operator, I'm putting my operator hat on, how would what's the best way for me to collaborate with my local VIC so they're aware of my product? So they've got collateral, or is it via online? What's the way what's the way VIC managers are wanting industry to engage?
I will probably get a few kicks from some individual VIC managers. I can't speak for everyone. I reiterate the importance to everyone of saying that all visitor centres are owned and managed by different stakeholders. As a representative organisation, we are leaders, and we are bringing visitor centres and their managers in a more consistent approach to tackling some of these problems. What I do recommend, highly recommend this if you haven't already done it, is that you consider visitor information centres like you would any other medium or sales agency or referral agency in your marketing plan, and consider whether or not you should be engaging with your local visitor centre, regional visitor centres, or any strategic visitor centres across South Australia. And the way to do that is to consider and have good knowledge of who your target market is, book an appointment with your local VIC manager, and in many cases, their immediate managers, particularly given that most visitor centres in South Australia are run by local government. So it's important to bring in those tourism development managers. It's important to bring in the next line managers that can also assist as well. Book an appointment, go and have a conversation. Discuss your target markets versus the customer base of that particular visitor information centre. If there's an alignment there, then it is very well worth you considering the VIC as a valid part of your marketing campaign, and on occasion and in certain circumstances, probably worthy of some financial investment as well, like you would in any other marketing campaign. So You would then create a mutually beneficial arrangement with your visitor information centre, and whether that is to sell your product on commission or to display your product, or even to have you in the visitor centre for direct referrals and promotion, whether or not it is to enter into campaigns, to have you included in trails and suggested itineraries, or even for the VIC staff and volunteers to come to your property and experience your product for themselves. Word of mouth and personal experience still goes a long way. We do understand that in tourism, like probably no other industry in South Australia, I believe that value of personal connection is still there, and it is perfectly valid between the visitor centre staff and your business. I would also highly recommend that you as an operator, and I notice we've got Roger Brock on the line here today from the Adelaide Hills. Roger is always popping in to say hi to my volunteers in Harndorf, and they always remember Roger fondly. And of course, being top of mind, if there is a job that comes up, they know of Roger's product and are able to communicate that to the consumer.
Deviate a little bit off plan here, Andy, and sometimes I do these with these sessions, so please excuse me, but it might be worthwhile us do a bit of a whip around for introducing the VIC managers who are on this call for the greater community on the call. You know, Andy, could you flick through and perhaps introduce the VIC managers, their region they're in, and they can quickly introduce themselves, just so everybody can see their faces. And then perhaps in our email that we send post this, we can send out all the contact details for each of the VIC managers in each region, as well as a resource for our members on the call.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. What I will do, Kathy, because you have deviated a little bit, and that's
sorry,
perfectly okay. I'll introduce the members of the VIC Network Committee that have registered. There's an awful lot of VIC managers that are on this list as well. So there is significant interest from the VIC's back toward industry. So we've got Craig Burton from Alexandrina Council. Craig looks after the Galway Visitor Information Centre and the Strathalbyn Visitor Information Outlet.
Fabulous, Craig. Did you just want to take yourself off your mute, and then you'll pop up on everybody's screens and just give us a hi?
Hi, hello everyone. I've only recently come on board, probably 6 months, looking after Galway and Strathalbyn, as well as a couple of projects we've got going down there, one being the Galway Wharf redevelopment. That's a $7.5 million project that's starting to come to life in the next 6 to 12 months, as well as some work within the Signal Point building and our own visitor centres, just some design and fitting out. So we're going well. Got a great team down there. They know what they're doing.
Great.
And look forward to the rest of the year, hopefully.
Lovely. Thanks, Craig. So anybody who's down in Craig's region, make sure you pop in and see the team down there and connect as well.
So next is Tanya Graham from the Clare Valley Wine, Food and Tourism Centre in just on the outskirts of the beautiful Clare Township.
Yep.
Hi Tanya.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you. Sorry, I have deviated off script here, so I appreciate everybody working with me, but I think it's great for everybody just to be able to put faces to names as well.
Yep, certainly. Yeah, so I'm from the Clare Valley Wine, Food and Tourism Centre. Our tourism centre is probably a little bit different to most because we're run by a community board with a small portion of money funded by the local government. And yeah, we have been very busy, which is excellent. And we just recently hosted the SAVIC Network Conference back in May, which was meant to have been last year. So I'm very new to tourism. I've only been in this position for just over 6 months, so I'm still learning a lot, like a lot of other people.
Lovely. Thanks, Tanya. So there you go, Tanya Graham in the Clare Valley there, for everybody to put a face to the name. Thank you.
That's right.
Next is Shirley Dearlove from the District Council of Peterborough, runs the Peterborough Visitor Centre and Steamtown product there in Peterborough.
Hi, Shirley.
Hi, how are you?
We're good, thank you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, here I am. Hi, thank you. Yes, as Andy has said, Peterborough Visitor Centre is run by the District Council of Peterborough, and we have the dual role of being the visitor centre and also the entry to the Steamtown Heritage Rail Centre. So it's a bit of a bonus there to be looking after both. We're in the Peterborough region, pretty much into the Flinders Ranges. We have got we have no eastern people coming through at the moment, of course, but we do have people from Adelaide coming up to the Flinders Ranges and dropping in. So we're steady, but of course, you know, August normally is a lot busier. So yeah, look, happy to meet anyone that would like to be, you know, have some information given to them or packs on Peterborough and the region. Happy to help out and collaborate.
Fabulous. Thank you, Shirley. So Shirley's your contact there in Peterborough, and entry into the Flinders Ranges there as well for any operators willing to further connect and collaborate with Shirley and the Vic in that region.
So Lynette Ansell is the Secretary of the Visitor Centre Network from the town of Gawler on the edge of the Barossa Valley.
Welcome, Lynette. Oh, Lynette might not be with us. Can you take yourself off mute, Lynette? No, that's okay. Like I said, this is what happens when I deviate from plan, guys.
All right, doesn't matter.
We might move on to another one, please, Andy.
Helen Davies, City of Adelaide, runs the Adelaide Visitor Servicing functions and is the Deputy Chair of the VIC network.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Hi, Helen.
Hi, how you going?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good. So Adelaide, I manage not only the Visitor Information Centre, but also our other visitor services, which include, we have a booth in Central Markets, our City Guides and our Adelaide Greeter program. We're also about to launch some retail into the Visitor Centre now that we've moved to a new, larger location. We've obviously seen a massive reduction in numbers in the City of Adelaide, although the Great State vouchers were a fantastic help to the city. And we saw a change, I think, in the types of people coming into the VIC who were looking for things, just like locals, looking for things to see and do to sort of rediscover their city. So, yeah.
Fabulous. Thanks for sharing that, Helen. So the city, the Vic in the city is located at 25 Peary Street there. So, and recommend everybody for getting to connect with Helen there. And that's just has popped up as well in the chat. So I'll pop that in there. 25 Peary Street, guys, I'll repeat, is where the Vic is located in the CBD. Thanks, Helen.
So Teresa Coles is the manager of the Whyalla Visitor Centre and Maritime Museum and also the treasurer for the VIC network.
Hi, Teresa. You're welcome to take yourself off mute.
Moving along, Lynn Sperling, Copper Coast Visitor Information Centre.
Hi everybody. Yes, Yorke Peninsula's Copper Coast is one of the regions that has experienced a great boom over the last few months, with people either discovering or rediscovering Yorke Peninsula, which has been fabulous. I know a lot of our operators though have general fatigue because it has been consistent and overwhelming for us. The visitor centre's actually seen a large number of people through, South Australians, as I said, discovering South Australia. And we actually do attract quite a wide range, age range of people, because our centre is co-located not only with the National Trust Farm Shed Heritage Museum, but also with a very popular putt-putt course and an indoor play centre. So we do find that we have those attractions that do encourage people to come. And then, of course, the VIC benefits from that as well. So we work very strongly with our operators in our area and have a very strong visitor information outlet network right down the peninsula to make sure that all of our visitors are serviced.
Lovely. Thanks for sharing that, Lynn, especially the detail on the demographic. That was a question that Amy popped up before, because naturally demographic from Vic to Vic will differ depending on region as well. And great to see that you are getting quite a cross-section of age groups through based on your location there and what's nearby. Thanks for sharing that detail, Lynn.
Sure, and that, besides myself, comes to the end of the VIC Network Committee, the registered entrance anyway. For people who don't know, I manage the Visitor Centre in Hahndorf, the Adelaide Hills Visitor Information Centre. And that's normally a joy. Like Helen, being so close to Adelaide, we have experienced significant reduction in numbers for particularly our key markets, which are the eastern states and international people here. Adelaide people know Hahndorf extremely well, and whilst we are seeing a number of them coming through, it is not sustaining the same numbers as what we would normally have.
Oh, fabulous. Thanks, Andy. And I'll quickly just get Mandy from Mount Gambier. Sorry, we didn't mean to miss you there, Mandy. But Mandy, feel free to lots of faces on our screens. We're trying to scroll through, so thanks for popping up.
Yeah, no worries.
Mandy down in Mount Gambier.
Yeah, we're between visitors at the moment, so our managers at the moment. So I'm sort of running the shop until then. The border closures have been really hard on us guys down here. So, but look, we're engaged a lot with our industry as well through our digital as well as face to face. So we're happy for them to pop in and say good day. So yeah, it's been very quiet, let's say. But yeah.
Fabulous. Thanks for showing us your face there, Mandy, and being able to put a face to the name there. I appreciate Andy, you working with me there as I took you off plan, so I'll let you go back onto plan there.
That's all right. Look, I think I want to share just some interesting, some insights into the VIC network and some of the data that we've gathered, if that's all right. As I said, we survey VICs in February and August each year. Since our involvement with the Tourism Industry Council, we had a key involvement with this year's inaugural Top Tourism Town Awards process. I had the privilege of being made the chief judge for that, so thank you, TIC-SA. It added a little to my workload, but it was fantastic to be part of that. We completely rewrote the accreditation guidelines and audit criteria for South Australian visitor centres in 2020. And just to give people that don't know or aren't aware, Tourism Victoria own the licence for accredited VICs and also the trademark logo that we all operate under. They sub-license that to the state tourism organisations, which in our case is SATC, and SATC engaged the Tourism Industry Council to make sure the auditing process is undertaken. You may not be aware of that. The national standards that have been around for an awfully long time, to be perfectly honest, in South Australia, we felt they were a bit outdated. We felt they didn't represent the work that VICs were doing, and they needed an injection of energy into them. Whilst we can't change a number of the national components because they're governed by national bodies and Tourism Victoria, I will tell you that in 2020, before we started this work, there were 52 standards that VICs were audited against. So as quality tourism businesses yourselves, if you're aware of that process, that would probably be around about a correct number of questions that are going to be thrown at you in an audit process. We've increased our audit criteria to 127 standards. So that's an increase of 75 from where we were before. Now that places a lot more onus on visitor information centres to do the things that we need them to be doing, including integration with the industry, working closely with their regional tourism organisations and becoming digitally savvy, increasing their business plans, looking at their target markets, doing proper risk assessments and working a lot more smarter as we transfer from a very manual system and somewhat outdated system to a more modern, updated, online, digitally capable way of delivering our service. Key roles, of course, still the benefits of VIC's key role is still that face-to-face interaction with visitors. Rodney Harricks addressed our conference in May and was quite specific when he said that visitor centres have an absolute key role to play at the moment and for the next 5 years as the world has changed, the world of tourism has changed, and we are operating largely in South Australia under a domestic tourism campaign. And our role when people are in region is paramount to the success of tourism economic targets. So that came directly from Rodney, and I love to repeat that wherever I can. So thanks for the quote, Rodney. All visitor centres are different. I want to put that out there. I think I've made that key point. The key point that we operate under our model of operation, the number one thing we want to do is to increase spending, increase length of stay, cause repeat visitation, regional dispersal, and increase customer experience. Through our survey work, I can tell you that we have a 98% satisfaction rating. We have a conversion rate assessed around those KPIs of 51%, which equates to an additional $215 per person that we've converted to stay longer, spend more money, or come back again. So it does work.
Yeah, that's some great stats there you've shared with us, especially about the significant economic contribution to tourism and in the regional areas that VICs do make, Andy. Touching on the digital element of what you talked about, you know, do you guys use an online booking program to book tours directly? That's a question that's come up in the chat function. Is it best that operators come to you with traditional collateral, or how do you connect in an online fashion with operators as well?
Sure, I'll try and be as brief as I can. There's some very valid points to that, and I noticed that one of those was one of the questions that came in on registration. Look, brochures, despite the myth that brochures are no longer required, brochures, maps, they are still in the top 3 reasons why people come into visitor information centres. They want something to read, physically read, rather than read on their phones. Keep in mind that while they're travelling, they don't necessarily have their full screens with them, and some of these online services, being perfectly valid for most part, are very difficult to comprehend and understand and drill down into to the level that they want. So they do come in looking for that reinforcement in printed material still. It is definitely declining. We understand that, and VICs are very conscious of that to display the relevant amount of material. We're no longer just big rooms of brochures and bags to take all your brochures and maps home in. We're there for storytelling, and we're there to reinforce that. The digital world, yes, we are engaged with the regional websites. Most of us are used as call to actions. We have our own websites. We've got Google My Business, TripAdvisor, Facebook, social media, Instagram, like the rest of the tourism industry does. But if I can just quote some numbers out of the regional visitor strategy, and I'll state right up front that the VIC network endorses the principles of the regional visitor strategy to working very much aligned with those wishes. Summary of businesses, tourism businesses in regions, and this excludes Adelaide because of the nature of that strategy. 5,223 tourism related businesses and 39 visitor centres in region. So when it comes to looking up every business's online presence and ensuring each and every one of our staff do the very same thing, that is an absolutely massive undertaking that we probably could not do as a statewide network. It's equivalent of each business is making, you know, what would be 120 phone calls to pass on the same message. But in our case, it's 39 visitor centres looking up 5,223 businesses, depending on the region that you're in. Adelaide Hills, for example, 1 visitor centre and 773 businesses. We can't possibly look up everybody's information online. And then, of course, we would have to go and experience it and reaffirm that experience as well. So very much better if you want to engage with VICs, and if your target market aligns with our audience, then have that conversation with your VIC manager and develop that personal relationship. Whether you choose to print brochures or not, it's that face-to-face personal relationship that you'll develop that will last a lot longer in the visitor centre and visitor servicing that we undertake.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some key takeaways there. Whilst the online presence is there, it's also about making sure you cross all your touch points with your visitor information centre and really having that relationship there, and having them have a feel meal of your product, and constantly being in touch, like Andy referred to with Roger, always popping in and continuing to manage your relationship with your VIC as they were any other part of your distribution mix for your product as well.
So if I could just continue on a key takeout, a few key takeouts for people. We do operate as visitor information centres. We're very cognizant that we are a major part of the region's visitor servicing strategies and visitor experience network. We are getting out from behind our desks and from our four walls in many cases. We're attending events, we're in the streets, we're there to be seen as much as we possibly can. And of course, we have that increased level of importance in this domestic tourism market that we're facing at the moment. We are here to assist in the delivery of regionally based initiatives with our RTOs and RDAs and councils. We have a requirement to train all of our staff for 20 hours a year. It doesn't sound an awful lot, but our aim is to increase that to 30. Most of our volunteers and staff will exceed that based on their own experiences and learnings as well. We need to match a visitor's experience. Need to match a visitor's interest with the experiences on offer in the region. And as such, it's very important that we know about your product and any changes to your product. We also support the state as a whole, and that's an important aspect. You know, a visitor centre is not only there for the town they're located in, they're there for the region they're located in, and also the state as well. So we do have the whole range of SATC brochures and information, and I'm sure I'll speak for everyone that we train our staff not only in our own region, but in each of the regions of the state as well. We are storytellers. We want to tell your stories, the stories that inspire people to spend more money. And staff advice continues to be the #1 reason that people are using VICs. Some interesting data from our last survey: 29% of people were from intrastate, so South Australia, 47% interstate, and 23% overseas. take that 47 and 23 out. We're currently running surveys at the moment, and we're very interested to see what our August survey is going to come at. We're talking about South Australian visitors into our regions. I'm very interested to see how that will go. 35% of people of there were day trippers and 61% stayed in region. 64% of them were holiday makers. And as I said before, 91% tech savvy. So they can look this stuff up online as well, but they see the need to engage with people in the region, and we are a trusted source of that. Over 50s market, 68%. The good news about that is they're baby boomers with lots of money to spend. So if you want to get access to that money, make sure we know about your product. But the even better and more inspirational thing for me is that 32% therefore are a younger demographic that's emerging into visitor information centres and finding the need to talk to people. And if I think back on my experience with visitor centres in my 20s, my mates and I would go away. We wouldn't need anybody to tell us what we needed to know because we knew everything. Coming into my 30s, when I had my family, we were looking for things to do with the kids, and in my 40s, starting to become independent travellers, and so on it goes. The need for visitor centres just became more apparent. Today, of course.
Absolutely. I think, Andy, those statistics reinforce a really good couple of messages you've sent. You know, the statistics about 92% of guests coming into a visitor information centre are tech savvy, but they're still seeking that personal recommendation. So again, collaborate with your Vic, be across multiple touch points. If that's not just brochures, it's that relationship aspect. It is also being connected digitally as everybody is, but it's the benefit of being across all the touch points. And also interesting about the demographic as well, it's not just the baby boomers. People, lots to be said about younger generations and them still wanting that that expert opinion of a local. Goes a really long way. People are just wanting to know about that unique experience or that hidden gem or an experience they've tried, and you must go and share that as well. And it all ties into that storytelling element. Andy, you've shared a lot of information with us today, not just statistics, the statistics that have been fabulous, but also some tangible ways in which how members on this can connect with their HIC managers who we've introduced throughout the call today. And we will send out those contact details in our email post this session. Does anybody, before we look to wrap this session up, is there any questions people want to ask of Andy or any of the members, the VIC network of members on the call today? Feel free to pop them up on the chat as I start to wind this up with Andy.
While we're doing that, Kathy, if I can, I'll just address the extra couple of questions that came in on registration very briefly.
Fabulous.
One from Houseboat Hirers Association wanted to know how they can increase exposure of houseboat holidays on the River Murray. Clearly, your demographics are very well aligned to our normal demographics. Your booking process is, of course, much further afield than people who might be coming into a visitor information centre. While they're in region, it's very unlikely they're just going to have an inspirational thought to go and hire a houseboat. It doesn't mean to say that visitor centres don't need to know about your product, but what it gives you an opportunity of doing, because you need that lead up time, is to negotiate with your regional VICs and other key VICs more advanced promotional packaging. Some inspirational itineraries maybe, or suggested itineraries that they're asking their clients to consider when they're planning their trip. We are not massive in the pre-planning stages. We are much better in region, but we do participate online and we do assist people that seek us as part of their planning process. It's well worth you being part of that. And from the Mid-Murray Council, Kirsty asked, what's the way forward for VICs post-COVID? What are VICs doing to reinvent themselves? I have to put it back to the ownership of a VIC. The ownership of a VIC in South Australia is predominantly, and I think the figure's about 85% of us are owned and managed by local government. Local government has massive amount of pressures to spend their budgets on various things. They are the principal stakeholders. If they're going to spend money on VICs, they need to hear from the industry. They need to hear from industry that they want to work with VICs. They want to help in reinventing those VICs. We've all got ideas on how we can change our own processes. Sometimes that involves quite a lot of money, which local government at the moment, and quite fairly, in most part, does not have. So your support to us is absolutely vital if we're going to reinvent ourselves into the future. We are certainly transitioning more into the digital line than the hard copy line. There is still a call for that. We're still assessing those every 6 months when we do our surveys. We talk about the results and where we're all going, what the trends are, and we're sharing that information with our stakeholders. But at the end of it, you are ratepayers, your local government is there supporting visitor centres, just like your library does. If you don't like something that's happening at your library, talk to your local council. Same with visitor centres. If you've got ideas for improvement, talk to your VIC managers and talk to your elected members, because that advocacy from the industry is only going to make things better from our perspective.
Thanks, Andy, for answering those questions. We've had quite a few pop up on the chat function. I really appreciate that. And I'm going to move from the bottom up because it's just a bit easier to navigate through it for me. Is there value getting our brochures into VICs out of our region? So, and that's come from, I believe, Karen at the church. And oh, no, it wasn't you, Karen. Sorry, someone else. But yeah, is there any value in, you know, getting your brochures and your content to VICs outside of your region there?
Yeah, absolutely, Karen. That's a good question. If you believe that brochures are still a valid form of marketing for your business, you need to get those brochures out as far as wide as what you can. There are definitely some VICs with brochure policies. Sorry, every VIC has a brochure policy. Some VICs won't accept brochures from out of regions. Others will charge a fee for doing so. It is a valid part of your marketing campaign. And as such, I will be talking to a number of VICs that you see as key to attracting more of your type of customers. For example, I think the church is in Gawler, isn't it? From when I was looking at the list, if it's in Gawler or Galway from Harndorf, I would suggest we see lots of people going in both directions. You might want to consider whether or not Harndorf is a place for you to be represented as well.
Fabulous, thanks there. And Shirley also popped on really nicely that, yeah, it's really important to get brochures out of the region. So let's think about this strategically. What regions align with your key demographic that you're trying to attract, not just the regions that sit in, obviously, where you're, not just the VIC that sits in where your product is located. Have a strategic lens on it, guys.
Also consider, Kathy, you know, the regional guides. We don't know how long we're going to have regional guides for in South Australia. They're on the list of consideration with SATC constantly. They cost a lot of money. They only survive because they're supported by industry. If you want to be in every visitor centre in South Australia, then have a presence in your regional guide. That's a way of doing that. It is expensive. We understand that, but it's also showing your support from industry back to the SATC and the regional tourism organisations for the hard work they do.
Yeah, fabulous. Yeah, great tip there, Andy. Thank you. Continuing to move up, Marianne Kennedy's just popped on late saying how important is the printed material. Absolutely still important, Marianne. This session has actually been recorded and will be sent over to you, so you'll be able to refer back to it, but it's all about being across all the other touch points as well, having that relationship with your VIC manager and staff as well. There's a couple of questions about booking platforms in terms of what are the preferred booking platforms for individual operators, and they differ between if you're operating an accommodation or being a tour operator. Look, Andy might have some knowledge on it, but also can everybody perhaps watch this space? We've definitely got a Zoom session coming in the next month with someone to further talk about revenue management, systems and optimisation as well.
Yeah, just very quickly, in addition to that, visitor centres in South Australia are generally covered by V3, Book Easy and Resdy. We are currently in conversation with Tony Coppins about a Wi-Fi towers that will potentially have the capability of being spread out across South Australia that visitor centres can be involved in. So looking to the future as well as the current, it is good. Book Easy, V3 and Resdy will generally connect to your visitor information centres. Different processes, different ways of doing it, but definitely worthy of consideration.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing those 3 platforms that do connect with the Visitor Information Centre, and we've got some more detail on that coming out in the future about optimisation and channel management as well. Just bear with me as I'm going to quickly scroll up through these comments. Yeah, this one's a really good one. Can we access all the centres at the same time for training and product knowledge, or is it best to use individual visitor information centres? What's the best approach there from an operator's perspective?
Just for knowledge, visitor centres only come together once a year, and that is at our annual conference. So you can appreciate that we are spread in all corners of South Australia, and doing it any more often than once a year would be definitely problematic. The regions that we hold the conferences in do change around, and as part of every conference we try and organise an industry expo or something like that to touch base on. It is an interesting point. The VIC network as a leadership body for all VICs is interested in talking to those tourism related businesses that do want to promote themselves across all VICs. So that's an opportunity at VIC network level, not necessarily addressing training needs at every VIC in one go.
Fabulous. Thanks, Andy. And one last question is in relation to the lovely data that you shared on your great surveys that you do. Is that available for industry to look at, or is that just an internal survey?
We can make that the infographic sheet available for you to distribute post the talk today.
Yeah, that would be valuable, I think, for a lot of our members when we're going back to aligning, when we look at the takeaways of this session, and that's really about making sure you're aligning your VIC with your marketing plan, and, you know, again, popping that with what are your key demographics you're working with. That would be really valuable. Thanks, Andy.
No worries.
Fabulous. Well, I think that rounds up all our questions for the day. Oh, thanks, Helen, for popping in that feedback as well. For the Adelaide VIC is happy to work with any regional operators on training. And they do that via Zoom. Works really well for that platform as well. Thanks, Helen, for sharing that. Well, I think we've nearly wrapped today's session up. It's been really informative. thank you, Andy, for coming on board today, sharing your time, sharing that data and that expertise, and hopefully our members, hopefully everybody's got some takeaways on how they can use this to improve visibility, relationships, and ultimately drive demand for their business as well. Like we've mentioned, after today's session, we will be sending an email out that will have, like we said, the contacts for the VIC information centres, some of that data, that one pager Andy said on the survey as well, and also a recording of this session for you to continue to access. So,
And,
yeah, sorry,
and if I can just finish by saying, well, thank you everyone for coming on board. It's very motivational for myself and my committee to see so many people interested in relationships with VICs. We are not a perfect entity, and there's no such thing as a perfect VIC, but we're definitely getting much better. I would like to just finish maybe by saying the best relationships are two-way relationships, and it's always best when visitor centres are working with industry's advocating for visitor centres, and that makes the world a much better place for all of us. So thank you for your time, everyone.
Lovely. Thanks, Andy. A nice little clap there for a few people. Thanks, Andy. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Keep smiling and have a good day. Bye for now. See you.